In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town.
Yeehaw!
And under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
And Mr. Vance, you say you'll fight to defend our right to disagree. Okay, great. So if 80% of Germans disagree with the AfD's ideas, does that mean you'll fight for them too? For the majority of the poor Germans? Or does this sheriff only show up when the disagreement goes his way?
The situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with. Now, the good news...
Vance dismisses the annulment of Romania's elections as based on flimsy suspicions. But here's the problem. Nobody knows the full proof because the authorities haven't made it public. And that's precisely why the press and the public in Romania are furious. Everyone, on both sides, wanted the elections to continue. Even the supporters of the two remaining candidates were against cancelling the second round. But the decision was made by the Constitutional Court, a political institution, which means politics played a role. So yes, Mr. Vance, Romania's democracy is vulnerable, but not because of the annulment, because it failed to identify and prevent foreign influence in the first place.
Based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now,
objection, Your Honor. Assumption. Mr. Vance, who exactly applies this enormous pressure? Name them. Who called? When? Whom? If you have proof, show it. Otherwise, you're just throwing empty words and manipulating the audience. Because here's the reality. Romania's crisis was internal. The problem wasn't Brussels forcing Romania's hand. It was a failure of Romania's own institutions to protect democracy from pro-Russian influence. The cancelled candidate wasn't some innocent anti-establishment reformer. He was a pro-Russian figure, disguised as a nationalist patriot. He lived in Austria for 10 years with no clear job, yet somehow bought a €500,000 house. Who funded him? He wants to disband political parties, nationalize private companies, and pull Romania away from NATO and the EU. He celebrates Putin, opposes military aid to Ukraine, and wants Romania isolated from Western influence. And all of this was pushed by Russian propaganda, amplified by TikTok disinformation, fake social media accounts, and manipulated narratives. Yes, Mr. Vance, Romania's democracy is fragile. It's a young democracy, only 35 years out of communism, with corruption, poverty, and a vulnerable population. But that's precisely why you need safety measures, because when a country is weak, it can be hijacked. Yes, most Romanians believe cancelling the elections was a mistake. It created more distrust, more chaos, and fueled conspiracies. But was it necessary? Maybe, because the alternative was potentially handing the country over to Russian influence. And let's not forget, Romania is home to the Mihail Gogolnicianu Air Base, currently expanding to become the US's largest military base in Europe. This isn't just a regional outpost. It's a key strategic hub for US and NATO forces, ensuring stability and security close to Russia's borders. Which brings me to a question. Isn't defending democracy exactly what political institutions are meant to do? If external forces threaten free elections, isn't it normal for democratic safeguards, whether legal, judicial, or political, to step in? After all, military bases defend democracy from the outside, but institutions defend it from within. So what's so upsetting, Mr. Vance? You support defending democracy with military force. Why not through the very institutions that uphold it? I'm just wondering.
Now, this is a security conference, and I'm sure you all came here prepared to talk about how exactly you intend to increase defense spending over the next few years in line with some new target. And that's great, because as President Trump has made abundantly clear, he believes that our European friends must play a bigger role in the future of this continent. We don't think, you hear this term, burden sharing, but we think it's an important part of being in a shared alliance together that the Europeans step up while America focuses on areas of the world that are in great danger.
Mr. Vance is right on one thing. NATO countries agreed to spend 2% of their GDP on defense, and it's a legitimate issue that not all members have met this target. Trump was right in the first time when he said it, in 2020, I guess. However, Trump's call for 5% is a whole different debate. No country can be forced to spend beyond the agreed 2%. That's the written deal. On the other hand, let's not ignore reality. Germany alone has spent hundreds of billions helping Ukraine, and most NATO members have likely surpassed the 2% threshold when factoring in military aid and arms donations. Fun fact. The German defense minister stated last month that military spending of around 3% of GDP would be necessary to make the German army war ready. However, he emphasized that Trump's proposed 5% target would consume more than, prepare yourself, 40% of Germany's total government spending. Now imagine, 5%, a level never seen, not even during the Cold War. That would mean crippling infrastructure, education, and social security. No roads, no schools, no social programs, just tanks and missiles. That's not defense, that's economic suicide. And let's be real, this is precisely what Russia is doing right now, a war economy at the expense of everything else. So where does Trump pull this 5% number from? Probably the same place as his business advice, the one that led him to bankruptcy nearly 20 times in his life. Sadly, it seems he didn't learn much from any of them.
Already in my conversations, and I've had many great conversations with many people gathered here in this room, I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me, and certainly I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for. What is the positive vision that animates this shared security compact that we all believe is so important? And I believe deeply that there is no security if you are afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the conscience that guide your very own people. Europe faces many challenges, but the crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making. If you're running in fear of your own voters,
fear of the voices of the people sounds familiar. Mr. Vance warns about government fearing the voices of their own people. But where have we seen this before? How about the McCarthy witch hunts of the 1950s? When the US government wasn't just afraid of its own people, but actively persecuting them. When artists, journalists, professors, and even ordinary workers were accused of being communists without evidence, blacklisted, and stripped of their careers. When the government created an atmosphere of paranoia, fearing that un-American voices might corrupt the nations. And if that feels too distant, how about Trump's America?
Who would have thought that a word was going to play so badly?
Lock her up, lock her up. Lock her up chants demanding the imprisonment of a political rival without trial. The Associated Press and other media outlets blocked from access because the government didn't like what they reported. Federal prosecutors and FBI agents fired, not for corruption, but for simply doing their jobs, investigating crimes. Now Trump even targets international justice officials, like the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, just because he dared to issue arrest warrants for people Trump politically supports. So, Mr. Vance, is this what you mean by fearing the voices of the people? Because when the US government silences journalists, fires law enforcement for political reasons, and treats democracy as a loyalty test, who's really afraid?
You need democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results? But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens. If you're going to enjoy competitive economies, if you're going to enjoy affordable energy and secure supply chains, then you need mandates to govern.
Thin mandates. That's just how democracy works, Mr. Vance. You talk about thin mandates as if Europe is facing a crisis of legitimacy. But here's the truth. There's no such thing in Europe. Unlike the US, where only two parties dominate and elections are won with 45-55% of the vote, Europe has multi-party systems. A party with 30% is considered strong, and even 5% can get you into government through coalition building. That's not a weakness, it's democracy in action. A party meets the electoral threshold, it gets seats, it negotiates, it governs. That's the game. That's the system. I quote, "If you want competitive economies, affordable energy, secure supply chains, you need mandates to govern." End of quote, says Mr. Vance. Translation: let our 20% party govern, the AfD, and we will let you live. We control your supply chains, and if you do not play nice, we will force you. What kind of mandate are you referring to, Mr. Vance? The one where Germany should allow the AfD to govern? Because let's not forget, while you were in Germany for days, you didn't meet with the German Chancellor. No, you met with the AfD's leadership, Elon Musk's puppies. The same Moscow-connected party that pushes Russian propaganda, is suspected of receiving Russian funding, wants to dismantle the European Union, is backed by Elon Musk, calls itself libertarian, meaning no unions, no regulations, no social safety net.
You cannot win a democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail. Whether that's the leader of the opposition, a humble Christian praying in her own home, or a journalist trying to report the news.
Then comes the dramatic part. You cannot win a democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail. Is he talking about Europe or the US? Because in Europe, that doesn't happen. Mr. Vance, just name one case in Western Europe where an opposition party was blocked from running, silenced, or unfairly prosecuted. Just one case where an opposition leader was illegally imprisoned or faced government-backed suppression. We'll wait. But in the US, Trump openly called to jail Hillary Clinton. Trump now calls to jail Biden. Biden pardoned his family. Trump pardoned his family. And both sides play the same game. And let's not forget, Mr. Vance, in Russia, about whom you stay silent, they don't just jail their opposition. They poison them. They assassinate them. They disappear. So tell us again, Mr. Vance, who's really afraid of democracy?
I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high.
So 1 in 5 people in the US today are migrants, and that's an all-time high? Interesting. Because last time I checked, the United States was literally built by immigrants. If 1 in 5 is shocking, what about the fact that in the US, 5 out of 5 people, except very few Native Americans, are descendants of immigrants? Because let's be honest, Mr. Vance, your country didn't just welcome immigrants, it was made by them.
Terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants.
Mr. Vance, you're right. Germany is facing real problems with migration. In the past 5 months alone, there have been multiple terror attacks involving asylum seekers from countries and backgrounds that, due to political correctness, we are not even allowed to fully discuss. A silence that only fuels public frustration and pushes more voters toward extreme parties. Yes, people are dying. Germans are furious. And with elections these days, migration has become the defining political issue. Although, if I may add a personal opinion, should it be? Yes, migration is a real issue. But what about the economy? Well-paid jobs? What about Germany's industries struggling after inflation and energy crisis? What about geopolitical stability? Because losing NATO allies, Mr. Vance, and economic strength will do far more damage than anything else. A nation without a strong economy and secure alliances won't even have the ability to control migration in the first place. In Germany, at the latest prime ministerial debate, 1/3 of the entire discussion was about migration, more than the economy, inflation, or unemployment. That says a lot. And yet, politicians haven't changed course. Despite widespread concern, the governing Socialist Party insists that Germany doesn't have a migration problem. That's why they collapsed in the polls, from 25 to 15%. The Greens have also lost support, dropping around 4%. But here's where you're wrong, Mr. Vance. Millions of Germans still support pro-migration policies. The Socialists and Greens together still have around 27% of the vote. That means millions of Germans went to the polls fully aware of the migration debate and still voted for the parties that say there's no problem. So no, you cannot say no voter went to the ballot box to open the floodgates. In reality, millions of voters did exactly that. And here's another truth. Germany and the US both need immigration. Aging populations are putting enormous pressure on economies. Industries are struggling to find workers. Migration built the US and Northern Europe on sweat, hard work, and ambition. The real issue is that we don't need criminals, extremists, or people who reject European and American values. The system is flawed, but it's evolving. Laws are changing. Policies are shifting. The issue is real, but so are the solutions. So, Mr. Vance, if you want an honest conversation, let's have one. But let's not pretend that every voter agrees with you.
If American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk.
Comparing Elon Musk to Greta Thunberg? Not that far-fetched. I've heard the joke before. Musk is the smartest 15-year-old in the world. And honestly, it fits. But let's be real. Greta is an activist, Musk is an empire. Greta has supporters, NGOs, and media attention. Sure, she's not an ordinary child, but she's still just a climate activist, not an official policymaker. Musk, on the other hand, is practically an arm of the US government. The world's richest man, controlling space tech, electric cars, AI, social media, and even defense contracts. He literally owns the infrastructure of modern geopolitics. And most importantly, his influence is 1,000,000 times stronger than Greta's. She tweets, he controls the platform. She protests, he funds entire industries. So no, Mr. Vance, a few speeches from a teenage activist don't compare to the power of a billionaire who controls global politics and probably you. Now, dear viewers, I would appreciate if you like this video, comment below, because unlike Mr. Vance, I actually believe in free speech. And subscribe if you like the content. It really helps me a lot. Thank you.
There's no room for firewalls. You either uphold the principle or you don't. Europeans, the people, have a voice. European leaders have a choice. And my strong belief is that we do not need to be afraid of the future. You can embrace what your people tell you, even when it's surprising, even when you don't agree. And if you do so, you can face the future with certainty and with confidence, knowing that the nation stands behind each of you.
Let's break this down, Mr. Vance. You are upset about Germany's firewall. What is that? This is the decision by all major German parties to refuse collaboration with the AfD. Why? Because the AfD is heavily aligned with Moscow's worldview, openly promotes anti-European Union policies, and while not formally declared an extremist party, has had multiple ties with Russian interests. The German courts have investigated them, and while no final ruling has been made, the political consensus remains. AfD is too dangerous to be in the government. Now, Mr. Vance is not happy because AfD's vision of the world perfectly aligns with his. They want a weakened Europe, closer ties to Russia, a libertarian state, meaning no regulations, no unions, no social safety net. And let's not ignore a bigger shift happening in Washington. Just recently, the US announced that peace negotiations for Ukraine should be handled by US and Russia, without Europe at the table. Think about that. Washington and Moscow making deals over Europe's future, while AfD, Moscow's favorite party, rises in Germany. What does that tell us? Maybe, just maybe, Washington and Moscow's interests in Europe are starting to look strangely similar. Mr. Vance's definition of democracy: my party must rule. Mr. Vance talks about democracy, but his real complaint is that AfD isn't included in the German government. Let's be clear, AfD is not banned. They are in the parliament. They are free to campaign, to speak, to be on the television. Their voters are not jailed, persecuted, or silenced. The only issue? Other parties refuse to govern with them. That's not suppression, that's democracy. And yet, Vance's argument boils down to, if you want prosperity, if you want affordable energy, you need to include AfD in government. I don't care that 80% of the Germans reject them. I don't care what the majority wants. My allies must rule. Mr. Vance doesn't want a democratic Germany. He wants Germany to be the 51st US state.
And that, to me, is the great magic of democracy. It's not in these stone buildings or beautiful hotels. It's not even in the great institutions.
Democracy is not in institutions. I beg to differ. Mr. Vance claims democracy is not in institutions, but democracy is institutions. Democracy is the institution of voting. Democracy is the institution of free press. Democracy is the institution of independent courts, is the institution of political parties, is the institution of free expression. Germany, like every European democracy, has all of these. So what is Vance really saying? He doesn't care about democratic institutions. He doesn't care about majority rule. He only cares about forcing AfD into power, whether Germans want it or not. And with Washington and Moscow suddenly finding common ground on Europe, we have to ask, whose interests is Mr. Vance really serving? In conclusion, congratulations, Mr. Vance. You managed to ruin your career before it even started.
Sir, you're out of order.
Out of order. I show you out of order. You don't know what out of order is, Mr. Trask. I'd show you, but I'm too old. I'm too tired. I'm too fucking blind.
Yes, we are blind. Blind with despair, voting for criminals after criminals. Too poor to afford not to hope. Too exhausted to see clearly. But there was a time when we could see, and we saw great leaders building great nations, freeing people from greedy tyrants and the iron boot of criminal kings. This speech of Mr. Vance is the biggest pile of bullshit I have ever witnessed, thrown at a room full of weak politicians from the old continent. Small people with big salaries. Can you name one great leader among them, Mr. Vance? Probably not, and that says it all. A continent once great, now without a De Gaulle, a Churchill, a Konrad Adenauer, no Helmut Kohl, no Mitterrand, a room full of diplomas and designer suits, but not a single name to remember. What times we live in. You hit an old lady, Mr. Vance. That's what you did here. A smarter politician, an Eisenhower or a Truman, would lift their allies, not weaken them. They would build a strong alliance to stand together against the real enemies of the world. That's what America did after World War II. Here in Europe, we owe everything to the US. Our freedom paid for with American blood on the beaches of Normandy. Our prosperity built on the Marshall Plan and the hard work of our grandparents. Our culture, we speak English, we sing in the shower, hit the road, Jack, and nothing else matters. And we have the same great-great-grandparents. We have the same blood. And yet you hurt your friends and reward your enemies. You weaken your allies and strengthen those who will never stand by you. This road you've taken is a dead end, Mr. Vance, and you will realize it soon enough. China and Russia will never be your true allies. Right now, they are laughing their asses off, watching you hand them power on a silver platter. And you make a quick buck today, but you will pay for it 10 times over tomorrow. So, we will wipe your spit off our cheek, we will swallow our pride, and we will wait. Because we know the real America is still there. The America built on our shared ancestors. The brothers across the ocean who will eventually spit you out like a US chewing gum, Mr. Vance. We, the Europeans, never forgot what our American brothers did for us in 2 world wars. And neither did they forget how the French once helped the Americans gain their freedom, building together the foundations of democracy. And if one day our brothers in America ever need help again, you can count on us to fight side by side for democracy and freedom.